Do you have a voice that bugs you sometimes? Most of us do. A little voice that will give instructions that we sometimes don't want to hear. You don't have to listen to that voice, but it's there. One winter day, I was driving up Ely Street in Cooksaki, which has a pretty steep hill, and as I was driving, I saw a woman trying to get out of her driveway with no luck. Her wheels were spinning. Now, before I go on with the story, I have to tell you that I have a little pet peeve in the wintertime that maybe some of you do as well. I don't like it when people try to drive without clearing off their car. I don't approve of that. I don't like driving on the highway and having some huge sheet of snow from the top of someone's car hurtle toward me, and I'm trying to protect myself from it. I don't like it. I don't approve of it. And this woman had used a scraper to get just a little tiny window, just a little tiny peephole out the front, and she had a whole bunch of snow on the roof of the car, and she hadn't shoveled her driveway. And so I felt a little judgy. And as I saw her wheels spinning as I drove by with my car that had been cleaned off, I said, well, maybe she'll learn her lesson. But when I got about half a mile further, there came the little voice. And the little voice said, go back and push her out. I had no interest in that. But I turned the car around, and I drove back, and I got to the top of her driveway, and I put my four-way flashers on, and I rolled down the window, and I said, need a push? And she said, no, I think I've got it now. But thank you so much for coming back. That means a lot to me. The reason I listened to that voice that day, the voice that was telling me something I really didn't want to hear, is because of this gospel. Jesus says, if you love me, show me by keeping my commandments. Now, when you think of commandments, maybe you think of the 10 Commandments. That's the first thing I thought of when I read this. And the 10 Commandments are important, obviously. Those are guidelines we need to follow. But most of the commandments we get in our life do not come from Moses. They don't come from some burning bush. Most of them come from that little voice that's inside of you and inside of me. So the little voice has Jesus' commandments in it. Go back and push her out. It doesn't sound the same to us as keep holy the Sabbath or thou shalt not bear false witness, but it's the same kind of guidance directed just to us, just for this moment. Last Sunday, I stopped to pump gas, and when I got home, it was hours later, I realized I did not have my face mask anymore. And I knew I had it at the gas station, and so I thought I must have dropped it somehow while I was getting into the car after pumping gas. And it was a really nice one. You know, we have a pretty wonderful mask-making ministry in our parishes, and someone had made me a special one just for like funerals with special nose guard over the top so it won't fall. And I really wanted it back. So I went back to the gas station, which is about a 10-mile drive, and looked around, and I went inside and said to the gas station cashier, have you seen my mask? And he said, if you lost a mask, it's gone. Those things are in high demand. And I noticed that he was wearing a very thin bandana that didn't really fit him very well for his mask. So I was disappointed, but I decided to come here to St. Patrick's to look in the church and look in the rectory. Where did I leave that mask? Well, in this church a week ago, that little voice came back. I didn't find my mask, but as I walked by the table where the masks are for people to take that have been made by our volunteers, the little voice said, take one of those masks and drive it back to the gas station and give it to that guy. I wasn't going that way. I didn't want to do that. It didn't sound like a good idea to me. But I looked through the masks and I picked the one that looked like maybe he would like that or it would fit him. And I decided, okay, I went back to my car, and there, in the back of the car, where I had already looked 25 times before, was my mask, sitting there. When I went to the gas station, a whole nother episode of this happened, but I want to focus on that voice. I think that's what we should be talking about today, on the voice that guides us. In the gospel, Jesus says, I will not leave you orphans. I promise I will not leave you orphans. And that voice is the proof that he has kept the promise. He says, soon the world will not see me, will not hear me, but you will. That's what it means for us to be able to see him even now, to hear him even now. He speaks inside of us. In that second reading, we heard that we have to keep our conscience clear. Keep it clear, which is an interesting word. I've heard of having a clean conscience, but this reading says keep it clear. And I think that's an important word because we have to keep it clear so that the signal can come to us, so that there's not any static on that channel, so we can hear that voice. And we'll always be free to ignore it. And even as I've been speaking today, you hear that I sometimes project onto that voice like it's a bossy pants voice. Go back and bring that mask. Go push her out. But it's not that kind of voice. It sometimes tells us things we don't want to hear. But it's almost as if we could always put the word honey in front of whatever the voice says. Honey, go back and push her out. Honey, take a mask and bring it to that man at the gas station. That's the voice of divine guidance. Last week, after hearing the gospel, we heard that the best prayer that Jesus prayed, the one that was kind of underlying every one of his prayers, everything he ever said, was, use me. He always said to the Father, use me. And the question is, how can we allow God to use us if we're not tuned in, if we're not listening? How is God supposed to guide us if we're not paying attention? It's almost like that little voice gives us assignments. And how are we going to know what the assignment is if we're not looking up at the blackboard? We've got to keep our conscience clear. We'll still have the ability to accept that advice or not. We could still follow that or reject it. But never again will we be able to pretend we didn't hear it. There's a way to keep this really simple, actually. It's a phrase that guides a lot of people. Maybe you've heard it before, maybe you've used it. The phrase is, do the next right thing. Every single moment of our lives, we're standing at a fork in the road. There's always a fork in the road. We're always facing the next choice we can make. And we're encouraged by this gospel, whenever we're at that fork, do the next right thing. Not the easy thing, not the thing that's going to help you and maybe hurt somebody else, but the next right thing. And a lot of times it's going to be small. The next right thing might be holding the door for that person that's maybe just awkwardly far away, but something tells you they need an act of kindness. Maybe it's reading something in our parish newsletter and hearing a call for service and say, I think I should call and offer to drive those groceries to people, to make masks, to donate money toward this or that. I feel that. Maybe it's making a call to somebody that you know you really should call, but sometimes the receiver on that phone feels like it's 200 pounds. It's doing the next right thing. And we will never have to do it. It'll always be our choice. But if we don't, we're making a choice to shut off the guidance. And I think the struggle there is, if we get in the habit of shutting off the guidance, we just won't be able to hear it anymore. It'll become background noise that we don't notice. If we live a life without that voice, our life might have a lot less hassle. That's true. We might not be interrupted with pesky thoughts like, honey, bring the mask to that person, or honey, go push her out. But we are never going to know why in the moment. That's the guidance. That's only going to be clear to us afterwards. Tomorrow I have a funeral for a man who would have been 90 years old this week. And he was married for 67 years. I know his family is watching today. We are praying for the Karras family today. But it is one of a number of funerals we have had for people who have died of COVID-19. And the funerals are almost always outdoors with a small group of people. I had a funeral this week where I was planning to sing at the gravesite, as I often do. And I had a song from our hymnal all picked out. I thought it fit the person's life beautifully. And just as I was getting to the point in the reflection that I was going to sing that song, there came the little voice. Honey, don't sing that. Sing this one instead. But I hadn't prepared that one. And I'm still speaking as this voice is talking to me. So as that voice in the back of my mind is saying that, I decided, okay, well, I know that song too. And even though I haven't prepared it, I'm just going to sing it. And I sang that song, a song that many of you know and love in the hymnal. As I was walking back to my car after the funeral, a woman from the family came up to me. And she said, Father, years ago I had a miscarriage. And I was devastated. And I remember one day just crying and crying. I was in the shower and I was crying and crying. And all of a sudden a song from church came to me and I sang it and it gave me comfort. And that song has been with me, guiding me ever since. So when you sang it today at the funeral, I can't tell you how much that meant to me. That voice said, sing that song. I had no idea why. It wasn't the one I prepared. But that's how this voice works. Maybe that's why Jesus calls them commands. Because if it was just a suggestion, maybe we wouldn't take it seriously. But if you love me, then follow these commandments, because this is how I plan to love and save the world. By you doing the next right thing. I want you to take this seriously because I don't want you to feel like an orphan. It's easy in this world to feel like an orphan, but I'm going to guide you. I've put my law in your heart. It's coming from deep within you. You're going to feel the guidance coming from your heart. And you might not know it's me, but I'm telling you that it is, because I'm going to come to you. That's what he says in the gospel today. I will come to you, and you will realize that you are in me and I am in you. The best reason to listen to that voice is that it's like having divine GPS inside of us, guiding us at each intersection. Go here. Honey, make that turn there. Go left up here, and then go right. And so if we listen to that voice, we're going to know where to make the next right turn and do the next right thing.